You know how it is, you want to get a real handle on something complex, but you're, well, short on time.
Happens all the time.
Right. So that's what we're doing today in the deep dive. We're diving headfirst into the mind of artist Bob Camblin.
A fascinating figure.
Totally. We're looking at this really interesting stack of his quotes, some details about his life, and, thoughts on his artwork.
A good mix of sources.
Yeah, think of it as your shortcut to understanding what really made this artist tick, the core of his unique vision.
Sounds good.
We've got everything from his own, often pretty mind-bending words, to how critics saw his work, even a peek at one of his paintings on YouTube.
Right, that yes painting.
Exactly. So our mission, to pull out the essential insights, those aha moments that hopefully give you a real feel for how Camblin saw the world and his art.
It's a wonderfully diverse collection of material for sure. And what immediately strikes me is Camblin's really fearless approach to ideas.
Feels how?
Well, he wasn't afraid to hold seemingly opposing thoughts in his mind at the same time,
Okay, yeah.
It's like we're going to be exploring a landscape of thought that's just full of unexpected turns.
Absolutely. And his quotes are, well, a perfect example of that. Take this one. Fortunately, some things remain forever, or another 10 years perhaps.
Ah, yeah.
It's got this wonderfully dry wit to it, doesn't it?
It really does.
But when you think about how his work has been described, as a kind of meditation on impermanence, that little addendum of 10 years perhaps really makes you think.
It reframes it completely.
Right, about the fleeting nature of things we often just assume will last. What's your take on that initial paradox?
Well, I think that slight twist at the end is key. It's like he's acknowledging our human desire for things to be stable and lasting, but then immediately grounding that desire in the reality that, well, everything is subject to change.
Yeah, no escaping that.
Exactly. It's not about resolving that tension, maybe, but about living with it, observing it. For you, perhaps this is a nudge to consider the expectations you have for permanence in your own life. Are they always realistic?
That's a fair question.
And is there maybe a freedom in accepting that things will inevitably shift?
That's a great point. And that keen sense of observation seems so tied to his connection with nature and just the simple act of experiencing the world.
Oh, definitely.
Look at these. 3 cottonwood trees, dense cluster of new branches, now with them gone. Look,
Correct.
it's so minimal, but it evokes a whole story of change, doesn't it?
Yeah, you fill in the blanks.
And then this one. The cosmos waves as me with tree leaves, sun-heated air moves across the electrons of my skin. Sunlight reflects those greens. First, white, then yellow-green, and in deep shadows, blue.
Wow.
You can practically feel the sun on your skin reading that, can't you?
You absolutely can. And when you consider his interest in haiku and those brief, evocative snapshots of everyday life,
Right.
these quotes really come into focus. He's capturing these fleeting moments with an incredible sense of immediacy.
Yeah.
Almost like he's urging us to really see and feel the world around us, not just glance at it.
Mm-hmm. Pay attention.
Right. For you, this might be a reminder to slow down and engage your senses more fully in your own day-to-day life. What details are you currently missing?
It makes you wonder about how he processed information. And he touches on that too. Look into the atom, you get what you need. Look into magic and you get what you need. Philosophy and art are in both.
Interesting pairing.
And this idea of finding a bright gray between science and magic, common sense and miracles, that's a fascinating way of looking at how we understand the world, isn't it?
It really is.
As if different approaches can all lead to valuable discoveries.
Well, what's so compelling here is his refusal to be limited by, traditional academic boundaries.
Yeah, he didn't seem to care about those.
Not at all. He sees this underlying connection between seemingly disparate ways of knowing. That bright gray he talks about isn't a compromise, necessarily.
Okay.
More like a space of possibility where logic and intuition, the tangible and the mysterious, can actually inform each other.
I like that, space of possibility.
For you, this could suggest that the answers you're seeking might not lie in one single discipline or approach, but maybe in being open to insights from unexpected corners.
Broaden the search.
Exactly. And then he just states, almost casually, that the sixth sense is to be, without a doubt, sense dubio.
Yeah, just throws it out there.
It's presented as a given, which really makes you wonder what kind of intuitive knowing he valued so highly.
Exactly. It's so matter of fact. Then there's this quote that feels like it carries a real ache. Bright day and I soar, How cruel that my soul is attached to this earth, and yet
Ooh.
it's this feeling of longing, right?
Yeah.
Of wanting to break free from limitations.
Exactly.
And then you see those Icarus references in his notes. Oh, sandpiper, why do you dance at ocean's edge? Come the waters fine,
Yeah.
fall, wax and feathers, flowers of burning petals.
Yeah.
Rah, rah.
Yeah.
Icarus.
Powerful imagery.
That imagery of soaring flight followed by a devastating fall, it really amplifies that sense of a spirit yearning for more but being held back by earthly constraints.
Well, the myth of Icarus is such a potent metaphor, isn't it, for ambition and the potential for overreach.
Sure.
By juxtaposing that with the feeling of his soul being attached to this earth, Camblin seems to be grappling with the inherent limitations of the human condition,
Right.
even in moments of great inspiration or joy. For you, this might resonate with those times when your aspirations feel kind of at odds with the realities of your current situation.
Yeah.
How do you navigate that tension?
He also seems to place a lot of importance on internal honesty and a kind of surrender to something larger.
Okay.
He says, I cannot tell a lie to myself for very long.
Yeah.
Camblin, 1974. Find something in nature that completes you and then surrender.
That second part.
That second part, finding that connection in nature and then letting go, that's particularly thought-provoking.
That act of surrender implies a deep trust, doesn't it? Not just in the natural world itself, but in something beyond our individual control.
Yeah, like a bigger force.
Right. It suggests a release of ego, maybe, a willingness to become part of a larger flow.
Mm-hmm.
And the initial statement about his inability to lie to himself speaks to a strong sense of self-awareness, which then informs this act of letting go.
It all connects.
For you, perhaps this is a call to cultivate a deeper honesty with yourself and to consider where in your life you might benefit from a little more surrender.
And then we have this incredibly rich and layered quote, there's a lot here. The light is all you need. The end is to evolve by doing the best you can. The means is to amplify what you're doing and believe in the balance, patience, and yet. Freedom again, and yet. In silence, the reality can be maintained, and the reality, the pain that I move away from. True love moves to indifference to protect itself.
Wow, yeah. There is so much packed into that one statement.
Right. Evolution, belief, balance, freedom, silence, even this idea of love needing to become indifferent for its own survival.
This feels like a concentrated dose of Camblin's core beliefs almost. The idea of light as essential could be literal, sure, but it also feels symbolic, right? Clarity, understanding.
Makes sense.
The emphasis on continuous improvement evolving by doing your best, combined with belief in balance and patience, that offers a pretty grounded approach to growth.
Okay.
But then you have that push and pull with freedom again, and yet in silence, suggesting a necessary oscillation between engagement and introspection.
A back and forth.
Yeah. And that notion of love evolving into indifference as a protective mechanism. Well, that's a really insightful, if perhaps a little challenging observation about relationships and self-preservation.
Definitely challenging.
It almost echoes the Zen concept of non-attachment not being defined by or clinging too tightly to any one emotion.
Okay.
For you, what aspects of this resonate most strongly?
It really does give you a lot to think about. He then turns his attention more directly to art itself, stating, art is not just images. Art for art's sake has become art for life's sake, or art for my sake, or art for survival's sake. That suggests a real shift in his thinking about the purpose of art, moving beyond purely aesthetic concerns to something more, well, fundamental to human existence.
This reflects a broader movement in art history, I think, where artists increasingly saw their work as being deeply connected to personal, social, and even existential questions.
Right, not just pretty pictures.
Exactly. Camblin seems to be situating his own practice within this evolution, suggesting that art has a vital role to play in how we live and understand our place in the world, far beyond just creating pleasing visuals.
Yeah.
For you, this might prompt a reflection on the role art plays in your own life. Is it purely decorative, or does it serve a deeper purpose?
And he gets quite direct with his advice on how to approach thinking and acting. Step off the train of thought to find the power that is no power, to do the work that is not work, to laugh the true laugh. Bending is not bowing. When you think, don't act. When you act, don't think.
That last bit.
That last bit about thinking and acting feels very much in line with those Zen principles of mindfulness and being fully present in the moment, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Stepping off the train of thought is such a wonderful analogy for quieting the constant chatter of the mind.
It is, yeah.
A key element in many meditative practices, the idea of power that is no power, and work that is not work. Hints at a state of effortless action,
Yeah.
of being completely immersed.
Flow state, maybe.
Could be. And the advice to separate thinking and acting underscores the importance of being fully present in each moment, whether it's contemplation or engagement with the world.
Right.
For you, where might you benefit from stepping off that train of thought and simply being in the moment?
Then there's this seemingly simple but very telling observation. We talked of changing the world, he listened, then took 21 cents from his coin purse to pay for his coffee and left.
Yeah.
It's this stark contrast, isn't it, between grand ambitions and the everyday realities of life.
It's a beautifully understated moment that speaks volumes about the often wide gulf between our ideals and the practicalities of just getting through the day.
So true.
The man's quiet act of paying for his coffee highlights the immediate, tangible concerns that often take precedence over more abstract aspirations. It's a grounding moment. For you, this might be a reminder to appreciate the small, concrete actions in your own life, even when you're also striving for bigger goals.
Let's touch on this brief but evocative tower sequence. On the tower we set facing the clouds, Act 1. The White Mountains, Act 2. The Cold Wind, Act 3. The lightning. We leave before the show is over.
Intriguing.
It feels quite metaphorical, almost like a mini play. What comes to mind for you with that?
Well, the tower itself could symbolize a place of elevated perspective, right? A vantage point for observation.
Okay, yeah.
The progression from the serene white mountains to the bracing cold wind and the dramatic lightning suggests an increasing intensity of experience, maybe a building of a momentum or revelation.
Right, building up.
But the fact that they leave before the show concludes is particularly interesting.
What do you think?
It could speak to the transient nature of any experience. Maybe we don't need to see the entire arc to understand its essence. Or perhaps it's about a deliberate act of detachment, not needing full closure.
Interesting.
For you, does this resonate with any experiences where you gained insight without necessarily seeing the whole picture?
That's an interesting way to look at it.
Yeah.
And then we have this very direct statement about finding solace and insight. Much better than arguing is to look at my watercolor palette.
Simple, but profound.
It's such a peaceful image, finding understanding not through conflict, but through creative engagement.
It's a powerful testament to the value of art as a means of finding clarity and peace. A direct alternative to the often futile exercise of argument.
Yeah.
His watercolor palette becomes a source of contemplation, a language that bypasses the need for verbal debate.
A different kind of communication.
Exactly. For you, what activities or practices offer you a similar sense of calm and insight when faced with conflict or confusion?
He also personifies nature in such a charming way. Well, that's enough about me, Mother Nature. Let's talk about you. What did you think of my last picture?
That's great. It suggests a really personal and almost reciprocal relationship with the natural world.
Yeah, like a conversation.
It blurs the lines between observer and observed, giving nature an active role in the creative process. It's as if he's seeking feedback from the ultimate source of inspiration,
Asking the source.
acknowledging a creative force beyond human judgment. For you, how do you engage with the natural world, and what kind of feedback do you feel you receive?
His thoughts on arguments and communication are also quite sharp. My attempts to stop arguing created an argument. If you argue, or if you agree, you may learn, but you do not communicate.
Ooh, that's insightful.
When you end an argument with a pessimist, you say, you're absolutely right. With an optimist, you say, it's a banana.
Banana.
Right. That last bit is wonderfully absurd and yet rings so true about the futility of trying to convince someone with a totally fixed mindset.
It brilliantly captures the often unproductive nature of entrenched viewpoints. The advice for dealing with pessimists and optimists is both humorous and insightful.
It is.
It suggests that true communication requires something more than just taking a side. It's about acknowledging different realities, and maybe even the inherent absurdity of trying to impose a single perspective.
Yeah, accepting the absurdity sometimes.
For you, how do you navigate conversations with people who hold very different viewpoints?
The quote about the open gate. The gate stays open, the fence is broken, he keeps searching, but does not know the size of his quarry. Yet he has faith. He looks in all directions.
Yeah.
If he could only see all around, all at once. It really speaks to that fundamental human drive to seek and understand, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
Even when the goal isn't clearly defined.
Yes, it beautifully encapsulates the human condition of searching for meaning or purpose without a precise roadmap. The open gate and broken fence suggest a lack of clear limitations or boundaries to our exploration.
Right, anything's possible.
The unwavering faith, despite the unknown nature of what he's seeking, speaks to a core human resilience. And that longing to see all around all at once highlights the inherent limitations of our individual perspectives.
Our blind spots.
And the desire for a more complete understanding of the world. For you, what quarry are you currently searching for, even if you don't have all the answers?
And then his perspective on change. Revolution leads to changes. Evolution is change. The first will be man's misunderstanding. The second is understanding. The balance will be found in our minds. Individually now, perhaps collectively later.
That's a really nuanced distinction.
It is, isn't it? Distinguishing between superficial upheaval and genuine internal growth.
He's drawing a clear line between forced or sudden alterations and the more gradual, organic process of evolution. Revolution, in his view, might lead to surface-level modifications.
Okay.
But true, lasting change comes from a deeper level of understanding.
Inside out.
Right. The idea that this balance begins within each individual and might eventually extend to the collective is a powerful one. It suggests that inner transformation precedes broader societal shifts.
That makes sense.
For you, what areas of your life are undergoing revolution versus evolution?
Then you have these moments of simple, profound wisdom, like you never miss the water until the wells run dry.
Classic.
And the really poignant haiku, 6 starlings sitting among broken branches. Look, no buds are growing.
No, stark.
Both speak to this sense of appreciating what we have only when it's absent and the quiet melancholy of loss.
Exactly. The proverb is a timeless reminder of our tendency to take the everyday essentials for granted. While the haiku captures a specific, stark image of desolation, hinting at a larger cycle of life and the absence of renewal, both carry a quiet, emotional weight.
They really do.
For you, what water are you currently taking for granted?
Let's delve into his reflections on what it means to be an artist. He says, the artist today is the only free agent. He's not committed except so much as he desires it.
Strong statement.
We may be moving to a participatory type of art. Religion. Belief. If I believe in ghosts, I don't have to see one. If I believe it's art, then it is. If I believe that I am completely contained in, then I can't be convinced. Faith can aid and hinder, so can discipline, so can communication. So can being in Camblin circa 1968.
Wow, connecting belief directly to reality.
And then, art is and it isn't, and now everyone knows, love. Art, if experience, no description is necessary, but often making out is confused with love, and feeling good is not always art.
Ooh, that's a really expansive and almost defiant view of artistic freedom and the power of belief.
It is, isn't it?
He's positioning the artist as someone uniquely unbound by external pressures, driven purely by their own internal compass.
Right.
The connection he draws between belief and the very definition of art and even self-identity is fascinating. It highlights the subjective nature of experience and the transformative power of conviction.
Belief shapes reality.
Pretty much. His analogy of love versus merely making out is a sharp critique of superficiality, both in art and in human connection.
Yeah, cuts deep.
For you, where in your life might your own beliefs be shaping your reality in ways you haven't fully considered?
He also mentions these concepts of resist and submit in the figure 4.
Ah, yes, the figure 4.
The book review of The Art of Everything describes a figure 4 trap as a symbol of entanglement. It seems like these might represent a kind of strategic duality in his approach.
That makes sense. The pairing of resist and submit suggests a dynamic tension, right? And knowing when to assert oneself and when to yield.
Okay.
The figure 4, as a trap, reinforces this idea of being caught or entangled in certain patterns or situations. Makes you wonder if he saw the creative process itself as a kind of strategic engagement.
Like a dance.
Yeah, a dance between resistance and surrender. For you, can you identify any figure 4 traps in your own life or work?
He cautions against the demon of being right and stresses the importance of flow.
Which connects back.
Exactly, echoing that earlier advice to step off the train of thought. He also has this wonderfully wry observation. Historians love artistic madness when it isn't alive and well and attending meetings.
Ah, that's brilliant.
It's a funny but also pointed comment on how society often romanticizes artists after they're gone, but struggles with their unconventionality in the present.
So true. The emphasis on flow over the need to be right aligns with that idea of letting go of rigid mental constructs.
Letting go of ego, maybe.
Could be. And his comment about artistic madness is a sharp critique of how we often sanitize and mythologize artists once they no longer challenge the status quo.
Yeah, once they're safe.
Right. It prompts you to consider how we value unconventional thinking in our own time.
Camblin also explores the difference between believing and knowing, suggesting that mystics have a direct experiential understanding that logic alone can't provide,
Right. Experience versus theory.
emphasizing the need for both intuition and reason. He sees cynicism as a type of creativity gone destructive and ego-oriented, which is a fascinating way to frame it.
That really is cynicism as curdled creativity.
Yeah. And he stresses the importance of knowing over just understanding to maintain a sense of wonder.
He's really valuing that direct lived experience over purely intellectual comprehension. The idea of cynicism as a kind of thwarted creativity is powerful, suggesting that even negative viewpoints can stem from a fundamental creative impulse that's gone awry.
Interesting angle.
And that emphasis on knowing resonates with his earlier point about the sixth sense, a deeper, more intuitive level of understanding that goes beyond mere intellectual grasp.
Got it.
For you, are you prioritizing knowing or just understanding in your own pursuits?
Later in his notes, he talks about returning to a naive approach to art and offers critiques of history, critics, and affluent culture.
Getting critical.
Yeah, seeing identification as the aesthetic and urging us to pass quickly onto the next slide, please. He defines a critic as a legless man who teaches running.
Oh, but memorable.
Wonderfully dismissive and visually humorous, right? He also touches on the innate need to make marks that predates weaponry, linking letters and numbers back to pictures,
Back to basics.
highlighting the importance of the nonverbal in a world just saturated with words.
He's expressing this desire to strip away the layers of intellectual baggage, doesn't it seem?
Yeah, get back to something pure.
Return to a more fundamental, less self-conscious form of artistic expression, unburdened by history and criticism. The analogy of the critic is funny and pointed, questioning the authority of those who might lack direct experience.
The runners versus the teachers.
Exactly. And his emphasis on the primal urge to create, to make marks, connects art to a very basic human need for expression that exists even before language. For you, where in your life might you benefit from adopting a more naive or unburdened approach?
He discusses his intention in art as being more about studying quantity over quality,
Interesting choice.
comparing artists to adults helping children find Easter eggs for historians. He also observes the correlation between what he sees as empty art and the efforts of critics and historians to fill that void with analysis.
Ah, the critics filling the gaps.
He even suggests that visual arts have become non-visual and introduces Zazen as the aimless mind focuses itself. There's a lot to unpack in that perspective on the art world.
There is indeed. His focus on quantity over quality could be a way of prioritizing exploration and experimentation over striving for immediate perfection, maybe?
Could be.
Process over product.
Right. The Easter egg analogy is a really interesting way of reframing the artist's role in relation to historical interpretation as a kind of guide or facilitator.
Okay.
And his critique of empty art being overcompensated for by critical discourse raises a pertinent question about the relationship between the artwork itself and its reception.
Yeah, what matters more?
Introducing Zazen as a form of aimless focus highlights his interest in non-directed contemplation as a potential source of creative insight.
Letting the mind wander. For you, how do you balance quantity and quality in your own work or creative pursuits?
He gives this almost playful but serious advice to play the game as if your life depended on it, in the context of drawing and overcoming fear and self-doubt.
High-stakes play.
He distinguishes between different types of drawings, action experiment, slow analytic, and conceptual, all while emphasizing the nonverbal nature of the act.
Different modes.
He also touches on haiku again, suggesting that the immediate reaction is more significant than the intellectual idea or the words themselves.
Feeling overthought. This emphasis on approaching creative work with both playfulness and deep engagement seems like a way to bypass inhibitions and fully immerse oneself.
Get out of your own head.
Right. The different categories of drawing highlight various approaches to exploration, but the underlying theme is that drawing is direct, nonverbal expression. And his point about haiku underscores the importance of the visceral, emotional response over purely intellectual analysis.
The gut reaction.
For you, what activities do you approach with that sense of playful urgency?
Camblin talks about finding one's mystic switch, that deeply personal, visceral truth that can be transformative.
The inner switch.
He advises us not just to look, but to truly see and to even embrace failure as a path to success,
Failure as a tool.
emphasizing that process and awareness are what truly matter, not just the end result. He sees writing as originating in pictures, noting how syntax can sometimes restrict nonlinear thought.
Words boxing things in.
And he challenges the ingrained idea that there's a single right way to create, urging us to recreate.
Constant renewal. He's encouraging a deep level of self-awareness, isn't he? Tuning into our own internal signals and trusting our intuition.
You're listening within.
The idea of needing to embrace failure in order to learn and grow is a powerful one. His perspective on writing and drawing highlights the limitations of purely linear thought and the value of more visual, intuitive forms.
Different ways of thinking.
And recreate suggests a constant process of renewal and breaking free from established conventions.
Keep it fresh.
For you, how can you embrace failure as a learning opportunity in your own life?
He suggests that activities like drawing, reading, and music can allow the rational mind to take a back seat,
Let the other part drive.
enabling what he calls the Zazen mind to uncover insights, inspirations, and solutions, noting that we often seek too hard and miss the way.
Trying too hard.
He then advises us to resist learning, learn to fail, learn to relax, learn to feel, learn how to really think,
Wow, resist learning.
and makes this wonderfully paradoxical statement: I didn't learn anything new, but I know a lot more now.
That knowing versus learning again, he's really emphasizing the value of experiential learning over simply accumulating information.
Learning by doing, feeling.
Right. True understanding, in his view, comes from direct engagement with the world, from feeling and reflecting, rather than just absorbing facts. That seemingly contradictory statement about not learning anything new but knowing more suggests a shift in perspective, an internal transformation, rather than an acquisition of new data.
A deeper understanding.
Exactly. For you, can you think of a time when you felt you understood something more deeply without necessarily learning new information?
His perspective on fear is quite direct. We have nothing to fear but fear ourselves,
Turning it inward.
which echoes familiar ideas but with a subtle shift in focus. He interprets Zen monks' teaching about always being Buddha as something he intellectually knew but now knows on a more profound level.
That knowing again.
He sees mirrors not as some magical object, but as a reflection of the innate magic that exists in everyone.
We are the magic mirror. The idea of fearing ourselves suggests that our own internal limitations and anxieties are often the biggest obstacles we face.
Yeah, getting in our own way.
The distinction he draws between intellectual understanding and a deeper experiential knowing is definitely a recurring theme in his thought.
Comes up a lot.
And the concept of everyone being a mirror to each other speaks to our interconnectedness and the way we reflect each other's inner states.
Seeing ourselves in others.
For you, what internal fears might be holding you back?
He distinguishes between magic for power, which he sees negatively, and magic for seeing, which he views positively.
Okay, different kinds of magic.
He suggests that both intellectual and magic seeing can lead to art, but that magic seeing is connected to the endless part of life.
The deeper source.
He believes that real seeing has its own inherent deceptiveness, becoming a whirlpool of relationships, with art being a kind of partial retention of that experience.
Wow, seeing as a whirlpool.
His directive is to fool the eye, fool the mind, and he observes the ongoing challenge for artists to innovate in a culture that often values disposability, even when core concepts remain constant.
The artist's dilemma. He's valuing a more intuitive, perhaps even mystical form of perception over purely rational understanding, isn't he?
Seems like it.
Seeing it as a way to connect with something timeless, the idea of real seeing being deceptive and a whirlpool of relationships suggests the complex and interconnected nature of reality.
It's messy.
Fool the eye, fool the mind speaks to the power of illusion and how art can challenge our assumptions. And his point about the tension between innovation and enduring principles in art is really relevant today.
It still feels true.
For you, how often do you question your own perceptions of reality?
Camblin views things like yin and yang and mandalas as having been, unfortunately, oversimplified through popularization,
Lost in translation.
echoing the symbolist's idea that explaining art often diminishes its essence. He finds communication to be both a wonderful and a sad thing, hoping for diverse forms drained by varied intentions.
The paradox of communication.
The standard sign against the sunset, quote, seems to highlight the limitations of trying to convey deep feeling through mere knowledge.
Words fail.
And the passage, white crystals, white salt, white wing, white bones, creates this stark, almost desolate imagery of dryness and finality.
Very evocative. Bleak, almost. He seems wary of reducing complex symbols to simplistic interpretations, recognizing their power often lies in their mystery.
Don't over-explain it.
Right. His bittersweet view of communication acknowledges both its potential for connection and its frequent shortcomings. The standard sign, quote, beautifully illustrates how intellectual understanding can fall short of conveying emotional experience.
Can't capture the feeling.
And that white crystals passage evokes a powerful sense of barrenness and the end of life. For you, what are some experiences where words alone felt inadequate?
He offers this really encouraging piece of advice on navigating life. There are no mistakes, you're doing the best you can, and mistakes are nature's way of telling you to trust your instincts or the next mistake could be really bad.
Trust your gut, basically.
He also deconstructs the proverb, pride goeth before a fall, in some really interesting ways, questioning its straightforward interpretation.
Pulling threads.
He uses this analogy of two parts of a hologram arguing instead of cooperating, which leads to his concept of the hologram, emphasizing the importance of seeing the complete picture.
The hologram, I like that. Seeing the whole. He's advocating for self-compassion and reframing mistakes not as failures, but as valuable feedback.
Learning opportunities.
Aligning with his earlier embrace of learning through doing, his re-examination of the proverb encourages us to think critically about cause and effect, and the hologram analogy is a powerful metaphor for interconnectedness.
Everything's connected.
And the limitations of focusing on isolated parts rather than the whole. For you, how can you reframe your own mistakes as learning opportunities?
He touches on this idea of approaching an edge of real time and considers different perspectives on how we see the universe, whether it's finite, a steady state, part of a higher order, or all happening at once.
Big cosmic questions.
Stating that solipsists aren't crazy, they just misunderstand. He sees us as living in the past, present, and future simultaneously, all focused on to dream of how it works.
Dreaming of how it works. That's lovely.
He talks about time travel at the speed of enlightenment and contrasts the approaches to life of the hawk and the snake.
Hawk and snake, different strategies.
And this quote, "The way back, long silence, melting rocks, infinite space, eternal time, a point of return, a cycle, a beginning and ending, the next step and the next and next. An action required a link to the past, a thread of the future."
Wow, that covers everything.
It feels like a beautiful summation of cosmic and personal cycles.
He's really delving into some fundamental questions about time, perception, and our place in the cosmos. His comment on solipsism suggests a difference in understanding rather than a fundamental flaw.
A misunderstanding, not craziness.
Right. The idea of us constantly dreaming of how it works encapsulates that inherent human curiosity to understand our existence. The hawk and snake analogy offers contrasting but perhaps equally valid approaches to life.
Two ways to be.
And that final quote beautifully weaves together themes of temporality, interconnectedness, and the continuous flow of existence. For you, what does it mean to dream of how it works in your own life?
He offers this quick remark about Louis Sullivan and the meaning of honor, observes that some crutches are wooden, some are gold.
Different kinds of support.
And embraces the idea of dolce far niente, the sweet doing nothing.
Sometimes necessary.
The quote, "Phoenix frozen in a salty shell," paints this vivid image of being trapped, yet holding the potential for rebirth, waiting for a hatching fire.
Potential within constraint.
The empty ribcage full of sand suggests that the living was the meaning.
The experience itself.
And finally, he offers this incredibly long-term cosmic perspective. It folds back into itself some 80 billion years from now. The bird and I will sit and wait for that magnificent pulse.
Whoa. Talk about the long view. These final thoughts offer a mix of the personal and the grand, don't they? The wooden and gold crutches suggest support can come in various forms, not all equally valuable.
Sure.
The phoenix image is a powerful metaphor for resilience and potential renewal, even in seemingly stagnant circumstances.
Oh.
The empty ribcage emphasizes the inherent value of lived experience itself. And that final, almost unimaginable timescale really puts our individual existence into a profound cosmic perspective.
Makes you feel small, but maybe connected too.
For you, what image or idea from these final reflections resonates most deeply?
That's been an incredible journey through Camblin's thoughts. Really something. Now, to give us some context for all of this, let's look at some of the biographical details we have.
Good idea. Grounded a bit.
He was born in Oklahoma in 1928, got his artistic training at the Kansas City Art Institute, and received a prestigious Fulbright scholarship to study in Italy in 1955.
That Fulbright must have been huge.
Absolutely. He had a career teaching at various institutions, but in a really pivotal move in 1976, he decided to leave academia to live a nomadic life dedicated entirely to his art.
Wow, just walked away.
Pretty much. The book Zen and the Art of Enlightenment, Volume 1, gives us a look at his very personal drawings and reflections from 1950 to 1974, work he never initially intended for public eyes.
So very intimate stuff. This biographical backdrop really helps us understand the roots of his unique perspective, doesn't it? His early exposure to art, that transformative experience in Italy.
The Fulbright, yeah.
And then his conscious decision to step away from the traditional academic path all seem to have profoundly shaped his explorations.
Set him on his own course.
Right. The focus on his private drawings and musings offers us a direct and intimate glimpse into his inner world during a crucial period.
Before he went fully nomadic.
For you, how might these biographical details inform your understanding of his quotes we just discussed?
The biographical notes emphasize that Camblin's art wasn't really about fitting into traditional critical frameworks, but about speaking directly to the viewer on a more intuitive level.
Bypassing the critics, in a way.
Kind of. He did receive critical acclaim, though. People like Charlotte Moser noting the evolution of his style, Eleanor Freed highlighting his deep interest in life cycles,
So people noticed.
and Texas Overview acknowledging his unique way of blending drawing and watercolor. Artistically, he moved from abstract impressionism to this Mouches Volantes style in the 1970s.
Ah, the flying flies.
Yeah, inspired by Dada and surrealism. Mouches Volantes, French for flying flies, referring to those little floaters some people see in their vision.
Okay.
And his technique used dots and dashes to create these kind of shimmering, almost optical illusion effects.
Playing with perception.
He was also a very collaborative artist, working with people like Earl Staley and Joe Tate on these events that challenged conventional art ideas.
Pushing boundaries together.
And he often signed his work as anonymous artists, emphasizing this idea of collective expression.
Interesting. De-emphasizing the individual ego.
Later in his career, he created series like Big Owl and Descent from the Cross, showcasing both his technical skill and his use of symbolism. Ultimately, he's remembered as a real innovator.
Yeah, seems like it.
Someone who continues to influence artists today.
It's fascinating to see how his artistic practice evolved through these different phases, isn't it? From those early influences to his more experimental periods and his collaborative spirit.
Real journey.
This willingness to challenge artistic norms and that emphasis on collective expression really aligns with some of his philosophical ideas we talked about.
Yeah, it fits together.
About the purpose of art and the role of the individual. The critical recognition he received underscores the impact of his contributions.
He made his mark.
For you, how does knowing about his artistic journey deepen your appreciation of his overall vision?
Finally, let's take a look at the YouTube video about his painting Yes, which is also featured in one of the books.
Right, the brick heart.
Exactly. The painting itself shows a heart made out of red bricks, but with green branches actually spelling out the word yes growing out of it.
Such a strong image.
There's also this golden yellow area described as electricage on a banner, all set against a natural background.
Electricage.
The interpretations from a Zen perspective are really interesting. The heart is the core of our being, the bricks as the barriers we build,
Walls around the heart.
and the green branches as representing acceptance and openness. It connects to ideas of mindfulness, balance, interconnectedness.
All themes we've seen.
It even has parallels with the I Ching hexagrams 58, which is about joy, and 22, about grace, as well as the Tao Te Ching's emphasis on yielding and being adaptable, like water.
Wow, deep connections.
The painting is really seen as this visual meditation on embracing life with all its challenges and the electric energy of saying yes to it.
Saying yes despite the bricks. Examining this specific artwork really brings so many of the themes we've discussed together in a tangible way, doesn't it?
It really does.
The visual contrast between the rigid bricks and the organic, life-affirming branches of yes beautifully embodies that balance he often sought.
Between opposing forces, yeah.
The prominent affirmation of yes breaking through those barriers speaks directly to his philosophy of embracing life's flow.
Acceptance.
And the connections to these ancient wisdom traditions like Zen, the I Ching, the Tao Te Ching highlight the deep philosophical underpinnings of his artistic practice. It truly does function as a visual con.
Something to contemplate.
Inviting contemplation on acceptance and resilience. For you, What visual elements in this painting stand out most in relation to Camblin's quotes we explored?
So, as we wrap up this deep dive into the world of Bob Camblin, what would you say are some of the real core artistic and philosophical takeaways that have emerged for you?
Well, several key ideas really stand out for me. His deep fascination with impermanence and the constant flow of change is definitely a recurring theme.
That comes up again and again.
He saw a profound interconnectedness between different ways of understanding the world, art, science, philosophy, even magic.
Breaking down silos.
The importance of cultivating personal truth and practicing mindfulness shines through in many of his reflections. He believed art had a significant role beyond just aesthetics.
Art for life's sake.
Exactly. He grappled with the complexities of communication, explored the dynamic balance between structure and freedom, and consistently emphasized the value of embracing the unknown
Questioning everything.
and questioning our established perceptions.
And as that book review of The Art of Everything pointed out, his work isn't about providing easy answers, right?
Not at all.
But really about inviting personal interpretation and introspection, acting as a catalyst for self-discovery. They describe them as riddles disguised as structures, Zen koans disguised as blueprints.
Great description.
And the review of Zen and the Art of Enlightenment highlighted this idea of finding everyday enlightenment through engaging with art and language, seeing the beauty in the absurd, and accepting the transient nature of things.
Finding wisdom in the everyday. Exactly. Camblin's legacy isn't about handing down a fixed set of doctrines or rules. It's about encouraging a particular way of seeing the world,
A way of looking.
a way of questioning assumptions, and a way of engaging with our experiences that can lead to those personal moments of insight. His koan-like creations really do serve as invitations for deeper contemplation
Makes you think.
and self-reflection.
Well, thank you for taking this deep dive into the thought and art of Bob Camblin with me. It's been a truly fascinating exploration of a really unique and insightful individual.
My pleasure. It was a rewarding journey through a rich and really thought-provoking collection of ideas.
And for you, the listener, as you go about your day, maybe consider the walls, those assumptions or fixed ideas that you might be building around your own understanding or experiences.
Those inner bricks.
Yeah, exactly. How might you introduce a little bit of that green branch energy, that willingness to accept, to be open, to say yes to the unexpected in order to foster your own growth and discover some surprising new insights?
A good question to ponder.
We encourage you to delve into the sources we've touched on today and to continue taking your own deep dives into whatever sparks your curiosity.